The move to University of Washington in 1969, if I look back on where you did in the United Kingdom, a consulting firm, a county, a move to Canada, this was going to increasing opportunity to go to a completely different kind of an educational background, to aeronautics and mechanics, to go to Berkeley. So you were moving where there were opportunities. Now you moved to University of Washington and said, right, maybe it's time to stay in one place.
Yes, I think I was 40 years of age, and up to then I'd really gone where the action was from my point of view, whatever we define, my wife and I, as the action. And here was an opportunity to teach at a well-established university in the part of the world we liked, and where we would have to find the action within that society. Right. It wasn't clear that we would find it, but that was the intention.
Understandably. Yeah. Now, when you first came to, speaking of moving, that's one thing you have been good at ever since you got here. Yeah. You don't stay in a house very long.
No. I mean, both of us seem to like new environments, even if they're local ones that are quite local.
5 or 6 years is a long time in one house.
Yes.
Is what it comes down to. That's something a few of us have chuckled about over the years. Now, when you first came here in 1969, when you were at Berkeley, that was an institution that was clearly a modern research university.
Yes.
Okay, so
yes.
You went there in 63, right? 62.
62, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Modern research university. It made the transition. Columbia was a completely different place. It was focused on what it was doing. But you came here in 1969, and the transition was being made from what had been primarily a teaching institution to one that was now becoming a more modern combination of teaching, research, and service.
Yeah, it was the civil engineering department on this campus was behind the times. I mean, and I would suspect of the order of 15 years or something. Its first doctorate was 1961 or 2, something.
61.
With Liam Finn. And,
right.
And what I arrived to see was a dialogue going on, which in many ways was not very pleasant. Essentially, a squabble between teaching and research, and as if they fall into completely different boxes and cannot be carried out.
And we know
together.
They're integral.
Yeah.
Absolutely integral.
And in retrospect, you just had to wait the older people out until they died or went away. But
right.
at the time, it seemed to be very without charm. Let's put it like that.
The department chair who hired you was the late Bob Hennis,
yes.
and he also hired me.
Yes.
And I think both of us could observe, I was pretty naive when I came here just after 26th birthday. The sense was he was doing a remarkable job leading the department.
Well, first of all, he was the most distinguished of the elderly faculty. He's a man who's had a justifiably outstanding reputation.
Of great distinction.
Yes, no doubt about it, in many fields, not just in a narrow type of field. And he was chair of the department, and he, as far as I could see, managed this through in as pleasant a way as it could have been done. But he had no doubts where it was going.
He was a gentleman and a scholar.
Oh, a remarkable man, yes, yes. But a lot of it was not very pleasant those first few years.
There was another major shift there that had happened, and this was the influence that Bob Sylvester had in getting the more traditional civil engineering group to think in a wider context of what has now become known as environmental engineering. And that sort of started in the early 1960s, particularly with a grant to provide training grants in this. So when you came and found this department, as I did, we found an aquatic ecologist, Gene Welch, aquatic chemistry was Russ Chrisman, air resources, there was Gus Rosano, a very, very distinguished colleague, Bob Charlson, an atmospheric chemist, and a very, very distinguished one.
Apparently,
Mike Pilot into all the aspects of it. It's a major change, as well as our more traditional sanitary engineering and the hydraulic engineering, hydrology areas that were fairly well done. So in a sense that we are seeing those blends of things coming in there, and that sort of rippled through the whole time that we've known it.
Yes, it was all news to me. I mean, as far as I was concerned, a part of civil engineering was sanitary engineering, which was but closely connected with public health, and
Right.
and looking at something called environmental was not in my vocabulary or sight at that time.
The other interesting part, Bob being a civil sanitary
He was
engineer,
a classical sanitary engineer.
exactly,
Yeah.
Harvard educated,
Yeah.
and he became the founding head of the Institute for Environmental Studies.
Correct.
And set that off on its path too.
Yeah.
Now, when you first came in, you've influenced quite a few people over the years, but there were 3 junior tenure-track faculty appointments in the early stages. Myself in 1970.
Yes, yes.
Nancy Nyan
Yeah.
joined us in 1973, and John Ferguson in 1974. John later to become department
Yes,
chair.
yes.
But a little comment on Nancy and how she's picked up and gone with leadership of in the transportation research.
Well, she was the first woman faculty member, I think, on a tenure-track position ever hired in the department, and one of the earliest ones in the country. I mean, there weren't many.
Right.
I mean, you look at the number of women doctorates in civil engineering in the country. She was one of very, very few.
Right.
She came into an all-male environment in which the method of collegiality was well established, and I think she must have found it quite difficult in that environment. She, over the years, has put together a remarkable research organisation. It's called TransNow.
Right.
It incorporates other universities,
Six universities
total,
total,
including Washington. It endures over many administrations of federal government.
Right.
And when I was involved in making sure it was doing a good job, I found that it was always considered to be the best of those research centres in the country,
Right.
which was wonderful news to hear. That was a remarkably successful appointment.
I agree.
Of course, you had no expectation of that. You're just hiring another colleague to pull their weight.
There were 3 of us who came in at that early stage.
I'd say, isn't that remarkable? I mean, your own distinction in hydrology and John Ferguson coming from Hopkins,
Right.
and bringing completely. He endorsed the views of Sylvester.
Bob Sylvester, no
yes,
question.
no doubt in my mind.
Bob Sylvester had a huge influence on us,
Yes.
even though some wouldn't quite recognize that.
I had my squabbles on a daily basis with him, but
Right.
I mean, he did a great job.
One of the interesting parts, though, since you came and I came, Mike Pilot was on the faculty in 1967.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm the last one who was on the faculty when you were here. So we've seen a complete
Oh,
turnover
yes,
in the faculty.
Yes, and that's a generation.
Right, but the issue is, one of the most important things we can do as a department is to reproduce ourselves and do it well.
Yeah. But I don't think we should clone ourselves.
I agree. We
And
should
that's,
not
that's
clone
what
ourselves.
I think one should avoid at all costs. There's a temptation to say you want someone like me, and in fact, your opinion as a retiring faculty member should not be evident at all.
Right.
That's my sense of it.
I think we've done a fairly good job, or I'm pleased with what I see as colleagues.
Good.
They're dedicated as educators. They are very good at research. They care about the profession. They interact very heavily in trying to do leadership things in the profession. And matter of fact, I'm amazed they get as much done as they do. And anyone could observe we get a huge amount done with not much in the way of resource, which says a lot about people who care about the joint.
Yes, obviously they see it to their own advantage as well. I
True.
mean, there must be a reward system in which you really feel if you pull your weight, that you might not do as well as someone at Georgia Tech, but within the relative goings on of the department, you will be looked after. Yes.
This is a pretty good institution generally.
It's good. Yeah. I mean,
it
it's
can
had
be
some
better.
hiccups. I mean,
It can be better.
Yeah, but.